explanations of attachment.
Okay, we've got learning theory and Bowlby's evolutionary theory here to explain. Let's start off with learning theory. This comes from a behaviourist viewpoint and rests on two principles.
Number 1, classical conditioning.
Oh, yes. Simultaneously there.
Yes. So this is learning through association. It's discovered by Pavlov, who did a Pavlov's dogs. You remember that. It's pretty famous. Basically, it's where an unconditioned stimulus produces an unconditioned response, and then the unconditioned stimulus is paired with a neutral stimulus, and the conditioned stimulus is produced from the neutral stimulus with a conditioned response.
For example, milk could be an unconditioned stimulus, which produces pleasure and relief for a baby, the unconditioned response. A neutral stimulus, the association with the feeder, usually the mother, is then there. So the mother alone becomes the controlled stimulus, the conditioned stimulus, and then produces pleasure and relief for the baby, which is a conditioned response just by the mother being there alone.
Away! Let's move on to operant conditioning.
Okay, I should do this one. Yep. This is learning to repeat behaviours that are rewarded, and not to repeat behaviours that are punished. Rewards could be in the form of verbal praise or money, etc. And punishment in the form of long jail sentences or abuse. Every time you do something and are rewarded for it, the behaviour is reinforced.
For example, a hungry infant would experience discomfort, and being fed, they would experience pleasure. So, the reward is the pleasure, and it reinforces the fedness. So, food is associated with the supplier. Food is the primary reinforcer, and the supplier is the secondary reinforcer.
That's right, and we can evaluate this learning theory with some studies. First of all, some strengths. Here we have a study on the primary attachment figure. They found that 40% of babies are not primarily attached to the person who physically cares for them, i.e. feeds them, and that the most responsive figure in the infant's life is most likely to be their primary attachment figure.
So when we say most responsive, we're referring to whoever responds most frequently to social releases.
Yes, so we keep saying social releases. We will explain that in a few moments.
Okay, so some weaknesses of this. A confounding study would be Harlow's monkeys, where they had 8 infant monkeys reared in isolation. There was a wire mother in one sort of area of the cage that supplied food, and there was a cloth mother who sort of had that comforting, soft touch. And they found that the monkeys spent more time with the cloth mother. So that is a weakness.
Yep, shows that they prefer the comfort rather than the food.
Yes.
The validity and extrapolation of this goes against it. Evidence is largely from non-human animal studies like the Harlow monkeys and Pavlov's dogs, so you can't necessarily generalise that to humans, as human behaviour is a lot more complex. And also involves evolutionary aspects, which we are about to talk about in Bowlby's evolutionary theory.
So Bowlby's evolutionary theory is that attachment is innate and ensures survival.
Innate means a gene that we are born with and is natural to us.
Okay, let's just go through some definitions here that we're going to need to explain evolutionary theory. So take note of these.
This explains the different aspects of this theory.
Yes, monotropy. This is a bias towards the primary attachment figure. It applies to most people that respond to social releases, so when someone acts in a certain way to activate caring responses.
Yes, so then we have the sensitive period, particularly the critical period where attachment is most likely to occur, and Bowlby said this is the second quarter of the first year of your life in humans.
Adaptive social releases help us to adapt to situations. For example, a baby smiling to receive attention or care.
Yes, so they're saying that they like the attention and the care by smiling.
So it's,
and to continue to doing that. Internal working model. This is the relationship with the caregiver, which develops infants' concepts about what to expect from others. So it's basically saying your experiences in early life
affects your later life.
It does.
So continuity hypothesis is the link between early attachment and later emotional behaviour.
Yep, so almost the same thing there. The main difference between that is the internal working model states that your relationship with the caregiver develops your concepts. So that's all more about early life. Continuity hypothesis says that the things you learn in your early life will affect your later emotional behaviour.
Okay, so secure base, which we mentioned earlier in the context of secure attachment, is a base from which the infant can explore and be independent.
Yes, now let's evaluate this. Okay, if we look at the internal working model and the continuity hypothesis, we can evaluate this with 2 studies. First of all, the love quiz study.
So there were 2 groups. Group 1 was 215 men and 415 women. Group 2 was 108 undergrads. They found a strong relationship between child attachment type and adult attachment behaviour. Securely attached people believe in lasting love, and insecurely attached people were anxious and doubtful about love.
Yeah, that's right. And another sporting study here is on childhood relationships. This was where 205 young adults were studied, and psychologists found a link between child and adult relationships. So loving relationships in childhood equated to more trusting and open relationships in adulthood. However, we have some weaknesses.
So weakness number 1, we're looking at monotropy, which I explained earlier. The study found that babies are joint attached, so they have more than one attachment, more than one primary attachment, 20% of the time.
27% of the time.
27% of the time. Did I say 20?
You did.
Oops.
It's okay. I forgive you. Another weakness to do with fathers and siblings. These are more important than Bowlby suggests. A study found a positive correlation between the number of nappies changed by a father and the strength of the child's attachments.
Hooray!
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't scroll down.
You didn't.
Other factors influence later relationships. This is another confounding point. Suggested that attachment type is not a good predictor of adolescent attachments. Life events in childhood, for example, experiencing a divorce, are more influential.
They could be. That is correct. And that concludes your explanations of attachments.
Hooray!